Hi Sid, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you sparing some of your time today. And I hear we're going to be talking a little bit about artificial intelligence and your company and where you see the industry going.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yes, it's an exciting topic. So, excited to jump in.
Fantastic, thank you. So Sid, if you don't mind me asking, I looked at your resume and I see you've had a lot of experience in customer support, and you were at one stage, on the phone lines, I guess, and then you worked out to be technical director. Um, so, what made you start your company? Because I understand you're one of the co-founders, along with Rashmi.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and most of my career has been in customer support. Like you mentioned, I started off on the phones, and moved my way up to managing a global support service for some of the biggest companies in the Bay Area, like Symantec and PTC. Um, the reason we started this company was because of some of the issues that I saw during my career that kept popping up no matter which organization I was in or which team I was working with. And the three issues, one of them from a customer perspective was this tendency for contact centers to send out surveys. It turns out no one really likes to fill them out, and the response rate is really bad. And one of the main things for that is they're just on a call with you explaining their issue and spend so much time, and now we turn around and send the survey out. So that was something that always used to irk me a little bit. But more on the operational side, I guess two other things were the lack of real-time insight. I found myself always firefighting and reacting to situations. That was the nature of the business, and we did very well at that. But somewhere I had a feeling like we should be turning the narrative around and doing something more proactive. And then finally, I always saw customer service as the first point of contact for customers. So we were sitting on this gold mine of data, and I didn't think organizations were doing enough to extract value from it. And this was a universal problem amongst all my peers when I talked to them. So this is something we set out to solve, and that's why we started the company.
So I guess like most entrepreneurs, I mean, we've all been down that road of working for some very large organizations. There is often, something that makes the timing right for us to jump ship and, venture out on your own. What was the turning point for you? What was it that drove you to say, you know what, I've got to do this? Because it's a big step.
Yeah, it is a big step. And the timing has to be right from several perspectives too. One, knowledge of the industry and knowing what some of those problems are, because I think one of the things that tech entrepreneurs are often guilty of is creating a technology because the technology is there. The way we look at this problem was we knew that this industry had a gap. And what we are doing is using technology to fill that gap. So from a timing perspective, I had enough experience to be able to say that this was a problem that was universal. We also had, AI evolving to a point where the capabilities were now, formed enough and baked enough for us to be able to use in these environments, which had a lot of variables in play. And more importantly, we're based out of Waterloo, and the culture over here is one of experimentation and innovation. So that kind of rubs on you over time, and all of those things have to combine. You have to have a sense of community, the right problem to solve, the right kind of technology capabilities, and the right team. And all of those pieces kind of came together for us to be able to take the leap when we did.
Well, congratulations for starting out your own organization. And
Thank you.
just before we leave that and go on to what you guys do, where does the name come from?
Yeah, so the name summatti is a Hindi word for think well. And one of the things that we wanted to do with our technology was, make sure that we were using it in a way that allows people to think about things in the right way. So summati is think well, think in a positive manner. And that's where, we came up with the name and kind of used it to infuse a bit of our background and roots into it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that information. So focusing a little bit more on what you guys do then, tell us a little bit more about then what summatti actually offers the contact center world today.
Hmm. So what we offer the contact center world is, more than a solution or a piece of technology. We offer a way to reinvent themselves in an economy that is largely data-driven. And what I mean by that is, in the traditional sense, contact centers are seen as a cost center. Yeah, you have to have it. You have a product, your customers are going to call you, and it's a cost that a business has to bear. The way we are evolving or changing the narrative around this is we're saying, look, as a contact center, you are the first and arguably the most frequent interaction that your customer has with your product or service. And so it has a big impact, massive impact. So you need to get that right. And not only do you need to get that right, but the fact that you have so much direct interaction with a customer and you're recording their voice, you're in touch with them, gives you this massive pool of data that you need to be using and getting that in front of your organization to promote data-driven changes. So what we're doing for the contact industry is basically giving them a seat at the table so that they can take this real-time streaming information that's coming in from their customers, extract insights out of it, and use that to promote innovation and change in the larger organization.
Interesting, because there's a lot of organizations who have those discussions or conversations with customers either through voice or chat or email, and in some cases that data just doesn't go anywhere, and then they wonder
Exactly.
how they can evolve, what's the next product, what are customers talking about. So you have a good solution there, by the sounds of things, my friend. So in terms of the intelligence behind this then, so talk to me a little bit more about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and what you're actually doing, how you're actually using this technology then to drive this data mining and intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AI is quite interesting in these times, right? I mean, the way we are using AI is we're using it in three different ways. The first one is to analyze a conversation. Okay, and a conversation in the context of a customer service environment has certain paradigms to it. I mean, people normally call in because they have a problem and hopefully get to a resolution by the end of the call. So our AI is specifically trained to pick up on the nuances of what makes a good versus a bad conversation. And there's a number of things that we look at over there, such as, is the agent empathetic? Are they demonstrating ownership? Or is the customer just getting tossed around from one person to another? Or are they chasing for updates? So some of these aspects are quite universal in a customer service organization or an interaction, regardless of which vertical you're in. So that's number one. The second one is from this conversation, we're able to extract the main crux of it. So what is the topic? What are people calling in about? And basically summarize that in a way that we can neatly categorize it without people having to do that manually. And the third one, the third way we use our AI is we merge the analytics we got from the first and second one and say, so here's a person who was calling about X. Here's what their experience was like. What can we learn from it? What were they saying about X? And use that. Now, once we have several such conversations, hundreds and thousands of them, we can very, very quickly and accurately tell you what the consensus is around that product X or that service X from all of your customers. So that's what we're doing. We're extracting aspects of conversation to glean these nuggets, which we can then start analyzing in aggregate.
And how sophisticated is the technology from picking up different dialects and such like? Because we live in a world where you can sometimes just travel a few miles and the words we use and the way we say things might be very different.
Yeah, yeah. So the technology is evolving. AI is evolving. But I mean, it's at the point where, if you look at the Pareto principle, like 80% of the time you'll get it right. And if you're looking at it that way, I mean, that's 80% more insight you have in your business that you don't today. Dialects and languages are a very interesting challenge. But as we started working with our customers, it turns out even in international markets, in India, in the Philippines, people use a lot of English. And one of the things that we've started building into our models is code mixing, which is a fancy word for saying people don't normally use one language either. In India, they use Hinglish, which is Hindi and English, and so on in other countries. So that is the one thing that sets us apart in terms of our accuracy, is because we're not limited to speech to a certain language or a certain dialect. We can kind of switch between those and offer a higher level of accuracy.
Okay, interesting. So where do you see the future going then over the next few years? Do you think us getting, that 80% going to 90%, 100%? Will we ever get rid of agents? What's your predictions, my friend?
um, so, I mean, yes, the 80% will certainly get to 90% and higher. But I think one of the things that you mentioned in there is will we be getting rid of agents? And, I mean, one of the things I think people have a misconception about AI is in terms of what it can and cannot do. And, there are people smarter than I who are fortunately mentors of ours. We're part of a program called Next AI, a very prestigious program here in Canada, run out of Toronto and Montreal. And some of our mentors are Professor Ajay Agrawal, Joshua Gans, and Avi Goldfarb. And they wrote a book to tackle this subject, which is called Prediction Machines.
Mm-hmm.
And the crux of it is, AI is a prediction machine. That's what it does really well, is it takes reams and reams of data and it gets really, really good at making predictions. What it cannot do is make decisions. So the way we see the world evolving from a contact center, and for any industry for that matter, is, there's a lot of menial tasks that are being done manually today, which AI would be a perfect solution to come in and automate. And then humans would be, in a position where they're making more critical decisions. So, for example, I mean, the solutions can come, AI-driven solutions can come and tell you today that there's a product category that's causing a lot of call volume and maybe there's some quality issues over here. What you do about it in terms of next steps and actions is more important, and that's not something AI can do. So, that'll change the way the economics works and the work people do, but it won't eliminate the need for people. And in fact, make it more important to make the right decisions based on the data that you've been given.
Okay. Now, one other interesting thing that we often get asked as well is, especially with COVID-19 and the pandemic, people are getting a lot more used to jumping on video calls. What you and I are doing it here and now, instead of maybe in the old days it might just been when I say old days, I'm talking months ago, but we might just had a quick phone call and recorded a phone conversation, but now we're all used to jumping on video. How sophisticated is the technology behind analyzing people's facial reactions and using that as a way to maybe determine, are they happy, are they sad, are they getting frustrated, to complement if you're on a video call with somebody in a customer service environment? Do you think that's the way we're heading, or are we still a long way away from that?
No, I think we're heading there, and COVID has been a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the impact it's had on the economy in a negative way, but also in terms of how it's accelerated adoption of certain technology in a big way, and video is definitely one of those technologies that has seen a big uptake in adoption. I think video definitely adds a sense of in-personness, if that's a word. And a lot of people are gravitating towards that. We have a couple of implementations where we're actually exploring that. And the jury's out on how much more data or accuracy you would be able to get to if you were looking at someone's expressions and analyzing their voice at the same time. So I think it's early for that. But the facial recognition technology itself is very sophisticated. In fact, there's a number of news articles in terms of how it's been used and its implementation around the world. And so I think, if you're looking at it, a few years down the line, we would be in a spot where having a streaming conversation like this, we would be able to pick up red flags, look at nuances or facial twitches to be able to say, kind of read between the lines in terms of what's going on in this conversation. And I don't think that's a far cry at all. It's just, the technology is there. Computational power has evolved where you're now carrying devices that can run very sophisticated algorithms in the palm of your hand. So the recipe, all of these things add up into the right recipe for this being a big success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can almost envisage in the future when you and I might be on a video call where we're kind of, our technology in the background is kind of alerting us to things maybe going on in the background, like put it might say, oh, interesting picture behind Sid. Maybe you want to talk about it if you're looking for a conversational point, or I see he's got a TV on and he's watching football. Maybe is that his favorite football team? There's so many things that we can start to conceive in terms of opportunities for the future for using technology to support the conversations that we're having. But
Absolutely.
what excites you the most? As when you go into when you get into discussions with some of those thought leaders about technology you mentioned earlier, what excites you the most about artificial intelligence and where we're going?
I think the thing that excites me the most about the evolution of AI is how it has gone from being this lab project that was accessible only to researchers and academia, and it was this elitist hoity-toity thing, to going through this democratization process where it's accessible and people can incorporate that into their solutions no matter how big or small they are. And I think that, we give the tech community a lot of slack in terms of, the things that they get wrong. But that's one of the things that I'm really excited about and they've got right, because that's a very, meaningful decision point that a lot of thought leaders came together and said, look, we have to get this right, and this is what we have to do. We have to make it accessible. And because of that, now you look at projects like OpenAI and other, open source communities that are contributing so much to the evolution of the overall industry, that it really has become a community effort. So I think that in and of itself is a big mind shift, and something that open source has brought to the forefront. And with AI, I think we're actually seeing the community effect come together, and we're already seeing things that are being built so quickly compared to what they would have been if people were working on it individually in their little silos. So that's definitely a huge accomplishment.
You mentioned earlier India, Philippines, you're based here in Canada. Do you see that there is more AI more ideas, opportunities coming out from one particular part of the world, or are you seeing it pretty much everywhere?
I think the adoption of AI is global. I think what is different between regions is perceptions and people's comfort level with it. In North America, people are a lot more data sensitive in terms of what can be shared and what can be analyzed and how much is getting out there into the ether. Whereas probably in South Asian countries, and I'm overgeneralizing here, they're not so much, and maybe the privacy laws aren't as strict. So those can have some effects in terms of adoption here and there. But overall, I think what people are looking at is the opportunity that the technology provides to be able to go through what is today considered basically currency, which is data, and how they can use that to improve their organization. There's a lot of industries that have been talking about, digital transformation for a long time. And now you're seeing that, there are some smaller players who are just skipping that thing all over and just going directly into AI because the potential is so huge that for them, it's let's put everything at this and see what we can get out of it.
Interesting. Now, the last question I got for you is you must talk to a lot of people, and you've been talking to people over the years about AI and technology. What would you say is the biggest misconception about AI and maybe its role in contact centers?
I think the biggest misconception is little knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? So when a lot of people are looking at media and just the popular articles over there, there might be this perception of the Borg or something else kind of coming out of this that is all super and can take up can basically undermine human existence. And I think,
Hmm.
one of those things that people often confuse is AI is very specific in the sense that, it's not generalized intelligence. It is being trained on something that we do over and over again, and it needs a lot of data points to do that. So, for it to be generic like that is still a long, long, long way away. And so some of the fears might be unfounded there. But the other part is, as we're making these specific use cases with machine learning models, um, I think people, don't understand how biases creep into it. And the biases could be in the data set that was compiled or how it was trained. And that is, I think, going to start becoming a bigger topic of conversation, and it already has in the open source community. And that's another thing that people need to get behind and get right, just like we got the democratization part right, to say, look, we need to nip this in the bud and make sure that, we take care of these things right at the beginning. So those are some of the misconceptions which I think will get cleared up as people get more in the know, and get a more sophisticated understanding of what the technologies are capable of, and what they can't do.
Very good, very good. Thank you, my friend. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. It's been really, really interesting to talk to you about something very dear to your heart and obviously dear to the industry. So thank you very much for sparing us some time. We hope to invite you and maybe also Rashmi sometime to join us again, and speak to our members and share your knowledge and wisdom, and help the industry continually grow. So I want to thank you on behalf of everyone at Contact Center World. Thank you for
Well,
joining
thank
us
you very
today,
much
Sid.
for the opportunity. It was a great chat. Thanks,
Excellent.
Raj.